الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على شفيع الأمة خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين هدى ورحمة للمؤمنين وإمام المجاهدين سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. My dear respected teachers, honored elders, brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I know the chair, Jazakallahu khairan, introduced me generously, but I'm nothing of what the chair mentioned and introduced me as, but Jazakallahu khairan. I want to give you some glad tidings. I want to give all of you some good news. And I want to give you good news not from me, not from the Muslims of today, and not even from the Muslims of the past, but I want to give you good news from the founder of this religion, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, our Prophet, he said in the hadith, إِذَا فَسَدَ أَهْلُ الشَّامِ فَلَا خَيْرَ فِيكُمْ. He said, if the people of Sham are corrupt, then there is no goodness in any of you. There is no khair in any of you. And if you look at Sham today, and you look at Sham previously, and you look at Sham over the last 50, 60, 70, 80 years, since the colonization has taken place, Palestine, Iraq, and Syria, every time they've been pushed to the brink of the test, what do they refer to? They refer to, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So I give you good news today. Before we begin the talk, I give you good news that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam himself said that if there is khair in Sham, then there is khair in the rest of the Ummah. And may Allah Azza wa Jal bring the khair of the rest of the Ummah out of us soon, inshallah. You know, during the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu anhu, there was an amazing Sahabi by the name of Abd Allah ibn Hudhafa radiallahu anhu. And they were sent out to battles. As we know, in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, the empire of Islam expanded vastly. So he sent them out to the Romans. And there, him and Muslims were captured. And there's a long account, but I want to kind of fast forward to the point I would like to mention today. So the king and the Romans, they captured the Muslims and Abdullah ibn Hudhafa. So the king says, who is the most courageous, the most brave, the most noble of all of these Muslims? Bring him to me. And the Muslims and the Romans said, the most noble of them is Abdullah ibn Hudhafa. So the king said, bring him forward. Heraclius said, bring him forward. So Abdullah ibn Hudhafa from his cell stood in front of this king. And he said to him, Tanassar. Tanassar basically means become a Christian. Leave your religion. Renounce your religion and become Christian. And he says, Usharikuka fi mulki. I want you and me to become partners in this kingdom. This is what I've got for you. Usharikuka fi mulki. We'll become partners in this kingdom. So what does he do from the very first day, from the first moment? He starts to play mind games with this Sahabi radiallahu anhu. He wants to see how firm his faith is, how strong and concrete his Iman is. Because even before going on to the persecution that unfolds later on, he's trying to test, are there any cracks in this person? And he says, I'm not going to become a Christian. I'm not going to leave my deen. Because he knew if he broke the strongest of them, then what would happen to the rest of the Muslims who were held captives? You know, if you have a leader, someone who you really love, someone who you really look up to, and he represents the people, and now he gives up, what happens to the morale of the rest of the people? It breaks down. It crumbles. But he didn't do that. Why? Because in his mind, he knew Muhammad sent him as an ambassador. You know, prior to this, he sent him to Persia to give a letter to the king to embrace Islam. So he knew he was representing the Muslims. So he knew if I crumble, the rest of the Muslims will crumble and all of us would have given up to Islam. So he kept this in mind. So he says, I will free you and I'll give you half of my empire so long as you renounce Islam and you embrace our religion of Christianity. So Abdullah ibn Hudhafa radiallahu anhu responded to him and he said, Wallahi, if you not just gave me half, but you gave me everything that you have and the Arabs possess, Wallahi, I would never leave this religion. and I won't renounce my religion for even a blink of an eye. So just, brothers, I want you to imagine something. He's standing in front of a leader. He's standing in front of the king. And he mentions to him the word of truth. You know, fear, he may have had fear inside him. He may have been worried. But he knew ultimately that his honor lies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he didn't renounce his faith. And now what I want to do with this story, my dear brothers, is I want to draw similarities between this account and what happens in Palestine. So we're going to jump in and out of this narration and go into Palestine and then come back. So now let's jump into Palestine. You have a king of an empire, a Roman empire. It wasn't some small empire. A king of a Roman empire. He lowers himself to who? Like imagine you have a king of today. The king is in his castle, the king is in his palace, right? The king has gone himself in person to the prison. So you've got a prisoner, and then you've got a king of this stature. He's come all the way down to the status of a prisoner. Why does he do this for? Because he saw something so moving in this prisoner that him as a king wanted to see what this man is about. And let me draw the similarity today. You know, Gaza is roughly only 25 miles long and 6 to 12 kilometers wide. Yeah? Look at the kings and the leaders and the emperors of today. Where are their eyes? Where are their ears? Where are they looking? All of these kings and leaders, and let's name them. You've got America, you've got Britain, you've got France, you've got the superpowers. They've even deployed military aircraft in the Mediterranean Sea because they're worried about what's going to happen. Over what? A strip which is 25 miles long and 6 to 12 kilometers wide. And you have Sunak, Biden, Blinken. All of these people are scared and worried that, you know, if the tide does change and the Muslims truly unite, it's their very last day and it's game over for them. So similarly, when you look at all of these people, and on the border you have Sisi, and then you have Abdullah in Jordan, and then bin Salman, all of these people are scared and worried about what's happening. You've got a 25-mile stretch of road, 6 to 12 kilometers wide, yet it's been on the headlines for how long? And it's caused sleepless nights to who? The kings and the rulers and the emperors of this world. Why? Because they know that this statement, this belief, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, was the most profound and strongest statement that mankind has ever embodied. He'll give up his life, he'll give up his money, he'll give up his family, he'll give up everything he has. Why? Because he knows his bond transcends his dunya and he's going to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why people are worried, and this is why the king had to go and see what Abdullah ibn Hudhafa had to say himself. Back to the story. He knows, okay, let me now touch upon the innate nature of man. You know, leave aside religion, let me try another tact. Let me try another tact. So what does he do? He calls forward a woman. And in narrations, classical narrations, it speaks about the beauty of the women from Rome. You know, how they were very, very beautiful. So he doesn't attack his deen. He says, let me go for the innate nature of what every human being needs. And subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does he say in Surah Al-Imran? زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ. You know, the desires of man have been decorated. What's the first thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says? Nisa, women. So let me go for a woman inside there. So the woman goes into the cell. And what does the woman do? Every time the woman goes to him, from left, he turns right. When the woman goes to him from right, he turns left. When the woman tries all sorts of movements and tactics to seduce him, he doesn't give in. And now when the woman goes back to the king and she narrates what happened, she says, this is a man of stone. The man didn't even recognize if I was a woman or a man because he didn't even look at me. So now the king, it says in the narration, عَجِبَ مِنْهُ. He becomes astonished at the belief in this person, the strength that this person has. And again, I want to jump back into Palestine. What has Palestine for the past 75, 76 years been seduced with? I'll name them for you. A two-state solution, different borders. A one-state solution for the Zionists so that at least they won't get killed anymore. Yani they can go under the leadership of the Zionists and they don't need to have any lives lost. At least they'll have food, right? At least they won't be killed. At least their sanctity is protected. But no, the people in Palestine were seduced by so many attacks. And if you actually go to Palestine and you speak to people in Al-Quds, they will tell you, we've been offered by Zionist businessmen millions of dollars for land. If you actually go to speak to people on the ground, this is what they say. They don't sell their land. They don't sell their land. Why? Because they understand the belief in La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And the same way, Abd Allah ibn Hudhafa, when the woman came from the right, he turned left. When she came from the left, he turned right. The people of Palestine have been doing this for 75 years plus. Because they only want one thing. They only want liberation via La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And this is what Abdullah ibn Hudhafa wanted. Liberation via La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Back to the story. He's completely unmoved by nothing. Nothing seduced him. He's not fazed. He's not scared. He didn't flinch. So what does he do now? Again, he goes to another form of an innate need by mankind, which is food and water. So they starve him for 3 days. They starve him for 3 days. And what happens after 3 days? He tells his guards, go and serve this man wine and pork. Go and serve him wine and pork. So they go and they present wine and pork to this man. And I think all Muslims know this, right? Under dire circumstances, that which becomes haram, i.e. from food and drink, can become halal for you, right? If you're dying, to sustain yourself, if you're dying, you can have this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows it for you, yeah? So what happens? What does he say? He says, no thank you, I don't want this pork and wine. So Heraclius, he's clever because he's done some research and investigation into Muslims. You know, their empires they're expanding. So he goes, but hasn't your religion allowed this for you? Hasn't your religion made this permissible for you? And subhanAllah, look what he says. Because of his honor, he understands he's a leader. He understands that there's so much at stake. And who is he representing in this case? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, yes, my religion does allow me to do this in this circumstance. But I didn't want to give you the pleasure that a companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ate and drank wine, so that you then in the future can mock the religion of my Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhanallah. And look at Palestine. Again, let's jump into Palestine. I just want to draw similarities to show times may have changed, my dear brothers and sisters. Times may have changed. Yeah? Circumstances may be a little different. But the idea of La ilaha illallah stays the same. And when people hold on to La ilaha illallah, people think, the Ummah is weak. We can't see any change. You know, if you want to look at Iman, the true manifestation of Aqidah, look towards Gaza. Look towards Palestine. You know, over here we may get consumed by books and ijazat and studying. And talabul ilm is what the Prophet ﷺ has said. But talabul ilm necessitates activism and action. If you are studying your whole life and you're not moving, what benefit has the knowledge come to you for? Just so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can say, you studied this and you took this ijazah from this sheikh and you traveled this long and you burned yourself in Egypt and you sat in the taxi when your back was against the hot lever, and now you can't even speak for the ummah. It's better you don't study because your hujjah will be less on qiyamah. So we look then again at Palestine. Their needs have been taken away. They don't have any food, barely any aid. And recently we heard in the last week that they're grinding animal feed so that it can be produced to make them bread, subhanAllah. Why? Somebody could then say the question, look, why don't they just leave? You know, if another state opened up the borders for them, look, just come. You're doing too much there. You've done your part. Massacres taking place. You've lost blood. The honor of Muslim women is being taken. Just leave. And they don't. They don't leave. Why? Because they know they have a responsibility. And what's this responsibility, my dear brothers? You know, all of us, we say that Palestine is a land connected to Iman. It's a land connected to previous Anbiya alayhimus salam, and we understand this. But there's a point that I want to mention which is deeper, which is why they will remain there. They will never leave. Generations have shown they will never leave. The final messenger, our beloved Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, In which place did he lead all the Anbiya in Salah? Which place? Anyone know? Masjid al-Aqsa. Yeah? What does this meaning imply? It implies that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam has become the true final inheritor of the message of Haqq in that land. So the people in Palestine, the Ummah in Palestine have understood that the place in which the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam inherited the truth and he is the final messenger, it took place in this land. Hence this is why this land is connected to Iman, will never leave. Not for money, not for aid, not for any sort of compensation. Why? Because this is connected to our Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So do what you wish. Kill us, we'll have more children. Move us away. Our legacy remains in this land. Why? Because we are doing this for Islam and the Muslimin and the future generations. Because they want to be part of the prophecy. Eventually we all know Quds is going to be liberated, right? Quds is going to be the future of the Khilafah which is going to come. And they're doing this for the Muslims that are going to come in that phase in the future, inshallah.